Hello, everybody. It's Rich220, and here's the other thing that I think it might be. I actually drained the oil when I was removing the connecting rod cap, and even though I put the connecting rod cap back in, you can't put them on backwards. There's only one way that they go, and the bearing only slides in on one side, so it don't fit in on the other side. The other thing I could think it would be is that I had left the oil pan off of that engine with no oil in it for 2 weeks straight because I just didn't have the energy to get back out there and work on it. I put the oil pan back up, but it was empty. There was no oil in the oil pan at all. So there's a good possibility because I replaced piston number 2 and number 3 and the rings for both pistons as well, of course, and both intake valves. There's a good possibility that it dried out enough that it would bind up if I'm trying to turn it with the fan manually, but not enough to dry it up to be able to start it with the ignition or crank it with the ignition. It won't start because I think that it's binded up like that. And, well, there's not any gas in it either, so. But I think if I get another set of bearings and, make sure they go on there right. Of course, like I said, I have never taken more than one cap off at a time because where I'm working is a driveway that consists of stones and dirt. And I really don't feel like running over to the clean sink every time I decide to lay a cap down on the ground with the bearings and allow it to get dirt in it. It's just not my way of doing things. So I would hold it in my hand until I put it back up in there. And I have noticed from the 2 that I took out today, but I only took them out one at a time. They will not go back in the other way. You can't turn them around and put them in there. You would have to actually hit that bad boy with a hammer. They wouldn't slide on. You understand what I'm saying? Like when you're putting connecting rod bearings on, you'll know, it'll go up in there very easy if it's the right way. If it's the wrong way, it's going to fight you tooth and nail. So it's not going to go in there. It's going to be a real problem getting it in there. I mean, you literally have to, like I said, take a hammer or something and pound the heck out of that thing in order to get it in there. So that's what I'm talking about. Maybe what it is the bearings are backwards, not the caps. Because there's one side where it's slotted to lock in, and then there's another side where it's slotted to allow oil to come in, like it's cut right through the cap. And then there's like a little opening on the bearing so that way the oil gets in. So that's what I'm thinking it is. It could be either that or, like I said, the bearings could be bad. They might need to be replaced. I mean, the car is 65 years old. That's about the only thing I haven't replaced on it yet, is that. Everything else in the engine department I've replaced except for the crank and the push rods and the lifters, because the lifters weren't collapsed, first of all. They're all fine. The push rods are not bent, so they're fine. I did that test by rolling them on a flat surface, and they didn't wobble. They were straight, so there was no space underneath. So there's not a problem with the push rods. The rocker arms, the ones that were worn out or the one that had a crack in it, I replaced it with ones that are just like the ones that are supposed to be in there. That's how I got them. And the valves, the intake valves, were sent to me from somebody in South Jersey, who I don't even talk to anymore. But they were the same as the original ones that I took out of there. So, all in all, I mean, I'm thinking it's probably just because they're brand new rings on new pistons. I think they probably got caught up, or stuck on the piston wall. And I can't turn them manually, but I can still crank the engine with the ignition, and the harmonic does move. with the ignition, but it won't budge with me turning it. So it's a good possibility. Letting it sit for 2 weeks wasn't in its best was not in its best interest for the bearings and the pistons. But like I said, I'm going to go out to the store and not today, but somewhere down the line, I'm going to go buy new bearings for it. And I got to check to make sure they're the right ones, because the last time I tried to get them, they were defective. They weren't cut right, and I know what the bearings on this look like, and they weren't the same. I mean, they may have been the same size, but you're not supposed to go home and customize them yourself. They're supposed to be pre-stamped and pre-cut from the factory, and I didn't have that. I had something that was not finished, let's put it that way. So I'm going to have to try again and see if I can find somebody that'll carry the right bearings for this car. Now that I look at a couple of the bearings on the connecting rod cap side, the crank is fine. There's no scarring, there's no scuffing or anything like that. The bearings, however, do look like they need to be replaced. So yeah, there's a little. I've noticed the second one that I took off. The first one I took off in the video wasn't scarred, so I don't know what that was all about. But the second one that I took off today was. So this just the bearing, not the crank. So I'm gonna have to go and try and get another set of those bearings, and then we'll see what happens. I mean, I got to take the spark plugs out. I bet you if I take the spark plugs out, I'll be able to turn it manually. There's no compression. So, anyway, that's my theory. What's your thoughts? And there's been a couple people who have actually responded already. And I'm not telling anybody that they're wrong. I'm just telling them from my experiences and what I've dealt with so far. This is what it is. You know what I mean? So don't think I'm trying to not listen to somebody on an advice level, because I am. I'm listening. But the thing is like I said, I go by what I've done so far, and if it doesn't coincide with what I've done, then that didn't happen. So that's what I'm getting down to. I'm trying to be honest and answer the person that's giving me advice, so that way they know that, well, if this is a possibility, then yeah, but if it's not a possibility, then no. So that's pretty much where I stand on it. I listen to people, I take the advice, but if it's not something that has occurred, or if it's not something that's happening, then I want to make sure that the person knows that this is not what happened. So that's where I'm at right now. Looks like right now it's going to be another set of bearings that I have to find, for the crank. And I already know how to take them off. What you do is the little nuts that hold, that get locked onto the bolts from the connecting rod to the cap. When you loosen them up, what you do is you tap on the nut with a hammer lightly, and it backs the connecting rod off the caps, and then you can take them out. Now, if it was backwards, I'd have to fight that thing tooth and nail. I'd probably have to take a pry bar or a screwdriver or something in order to try and pry them apart and lean it up against something. But these are not that difficult to remove. So if they're not that difficult to remove, then they're apparently put in there the right way. They can't be put in backwards, because the way the journals are set up, there's bulges in between, the two, you have two connecting rods that are in, one section. You have another two over here. You have another two over here, and another two over here. So it's like you have two connecting rods for each space. Okay? It's not one and then a journal balance or whatever you want to call it. And, and then another one. It's not like that. There's actually two connecting rods for each journal that they ride in. That might be what's different from the other ones. I mean, they may have their own independent journals that the connecting rods and the caps ride in, but this one does not. So that might be the other thing. They might be getting caught up. Maybe the ring is getting caught up on the other connecting rod, cap, or rod. Anything is possible. I would not put anything above it or say that it's not possible, because it is. You know, there was people that were telling me, like, you know, they don't screw up timing chains and gears and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is, when I had my 50 Dodge, I had to put a new timing chain in it. And where I put it was, you know, top gear at 6, the bottom gear at 12. And when I went to go and start it up, it wouldn't start. You know why? Because it was a tooth off. The marking wasn't in the proper space. And that's a factory screw up. And that was on the top gear, not the bottom gear. So I actually took it to a friend of mine. We sandblasted it, and we put a marking in the proper area. And sure enough, the car started. So, yeah, those things do happen, folks. They're a freak of nature, but they do happen. All right, like and subscribe, and ring the bell for post notifications. We'll see you in the next one. And yes, if you have advice to go along with this, put it down in the comment section. I actually respond, and you guys know that. But if it's something that didn't happen, or if it's something that I didn't do, I'm going to tell you. I'm just being honest. You know, just that way that alleviates that from your mind. You know, so that way you know that that's not what happened. And it's time to move to another theory. So that's what the case is. All right, folks. We'll see you soon. Bye.